Welcome to the unknown, a place where ghosts, cryptids, and extraterrestrials are sought. This is where you'll find answers to questions about what lurks in the dark. This is Periscope Uncensored.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Periscope Uncensored here on the LNM Radio Network. I'm your host, Clarissa Vazquez. We're having some technical issues tonight, and so Jax will be joining us shortly, but until then, you're stuck with me. And until then, tonight's show, we are going to have a paranormal roundtable discussion between Jax's team and mine. So we're going to have members from the East Coast Coalition of Paranormal Investigators, as well as the Colorado Coalition of Paranormal Investigators on the line with us. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. I know for a fact that we're going to have the technical managers from both teams on the show with us. So things may get a little nerdy. I don't know. But on a personal note, since it's just me here, I know for those that were listening to Hidden World Paranormal Talk Radio last night, go ahead and, well, you get thanked again, I guess. But for the listeners on Periscope Uncensored that were not listening last night, I want to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart for all of the thoughts, prayers, positive energy, happy vibes, well wishes, and everything that were sent out and requested for my family. I am very pleased to report that my brother has made a complete and total recovery. The doctors cannot explain it. They cannot explain how completely he's recovered, and they cannot explain how quickly he has recovered, considering they don't know exactly how long he was dead before they found him. So, again, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Daryl, Katie, Michael Vera, Laura Lee Potvin, Seraphine Hurley, of course, Chris and Jax, my two co-hosts, everybody on the LNM network, that actually, they went on the air. These folks went on the air and said, one of our own is having a crisis, we need your thoughts and prayers. And so on behalf of my family and my brother and myself, I am very, very grateful. And thank you all very, very much for all of that. And Jax, I've got him on the call, but he still has no audio. He can't hear us. I'm going to send him a message asking him to unplug his headphones and see if that works. Because it could just be his computer settings. Or he can go to call settings and check the audio settings from there. So, he just dropped out. So we'll see if we can get Jax back. Today has been a day for technical issues. Let me tell you, on Hidden World and Periscope both. If you missed an episode of either of those shows, you can go to our YouTube channels and catch the archives. And Jax has been great about uploading all of the archives from Periscope Uncensored and putting them on our YouTube channel, which is Periscope Radio. Chris has, in the past, been really good about that, but he has gotten busy. Life has started happening for Chris. And so he's like 5 episodes behind. And so last night, the executive decision was made that Clarissa is going to take over uploading our archives to YouTube. And so I managed to get one episode converted to an MP4, to a video format. And that took about 3 hours. And I got it started uploading to YouTube, and it stalled out at 30%. It is still stalled out. It's been almost 2 hours now. It's still stalled out at 30% trying to upload to YouTube. Talked to Jax. I'm like, what software are you using to do the Periscope archives? He told me. Downloaded the software, thinking it was going to be a lot faster than my best friend is calling. I'm going to send him the voicemail. thinking it was going to be faster than the Windows Live Movie Maker that I had been using. And I got one episode of Hidden World created. It has been an hour and 54 minutes, and it is still 69% rendered. So it's even slower than the Windows Live Movie Maker that I was using. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. YouTube is stalled out. My other stuff is stalling out and taking its own time. And so I'm a little frustrated with technology right now. And I know Jax is frustrated with technology right now because, he's been on this Skype call a couple of times trying to, get in so that, we can host the show together. And he can't do it. He can see my lips moving, but he can't hear my voice, which, depending on who you ask, may not be a bad thing. I don't know. So, hopefully we can get those technical issues resolved here really soon. But again, at the bottom of the hour, we're going to be bringing on members of CCPI and ECCPI. And we're going to be talking about some ghosty things. And the reason we decided we wanted to do this is really because it's the holidays. And the holidays, regardless of your practices or beliefs, the holidays are about family. And by family, we don't necessarily mean people that you're blood related to. Family can be, your close friends or even distant relatives or people you work with or what have you. And just got a message from Chris asking if we were on. So, yeah, we are. Katie, are we actually broadcasting over the air? Am I talking to myself for no reason, or, can the listeners hear me? I don't know. I just messaged Chris saying, yeah. Okay. Katie says, yes, we're broadcasting. So it's the night for technical difficulties. But anyway, as I was saying, 'tis the season to spend time with your family. And the way Jax and I operate our two investigation teams is we treat them like family. And in the 14 years that I've been running CCPI, the Colorado Coalition of Paranormal Investigators, and you can learn more about us at www.ccpi-paranormal.com if you're so inclined. I recommend you finish listening to Periscope before you do that. But the way I've been running CCPI for the last 14 years is I've always treated my team like a family. I have to some extent, and it's different with everybody, I have a personal relationship with all of my investigators to some extent. That has come back to bite me in the butt more than once. It really has, because people, just like any other organization or agency or workplace or what have you, people come and go. And so when you have these close relationships with people, and then they leave, or there's strife, among the members or, among the family, just like any other family, occasionally there's some bickering and occasionally there's some fighting. And that's where you have to draw the line between, treating it like a family and treating it like a business sometimes. I hate having to put the boss hat on sometimes, but when it needs to be done, it needs to be done. But in the end, by treating this organization like a family and having these close personal relationships with my investigators, we trust each other more. We can read each other better during investigation circumstances. There are a couple of investigators I can tell just by their change in posture, whether, something's up with them. And it's not necessarily a bad thing that may be up with them. Maybe they're noticing something, or they're sensing something, or something doesn't feel right or sound right or smell right, or what have you. And so by having those relationships with those investigators, we learn how to work together better. We've got each other's backs. We trust each other.
You have reached the voicemail box.
Ah,
I'm sorry, but you know something? I have to say one thing. I love your cooperativeness of your business as well. I had to let you know that.
oh, thanks, Daryl.
Yeah, I've learned so much because of you, and I'm trying to get our buddy Mr. Jax back on. So
Well,
give
it
me a minute.
says we've got a caller on the line. Is that Jax?
Yes, but it keeps dropping, so I will have to work on it. It's okay. You know, you got Odin here, your
Oh my
partner. Look,
gosh. Hey, you said the O word, you have to drink.
I don't
Even
have the. I got a bottles in the freezer. Don't worry about it.
even though we're not on Hidden World and that's the drinky drunk show, um, you still have to drink because you said the O word.
Okay, hold
And
on.
for our Periscope listeners that are not familiar with this, whenever Daryl uh, comes on the show, whenever he goes live on our show and refers to himself as Odin, and that's his alter ego, whenever Daryl comes on and refers to himself as Odin, we make him drink something alcoholic. And there have been a few times where he's gotten a little toasty.
Well, I will be visiting you ladies on your show, the 3+1 drunk broads, and we will
Uh-huh.
enjoy that show. But I'm waiting on Mr. Do we have the man, the myth,
Hello.
Jax?
Hey,
How
buddy.
you doing?
He
Hi.
is here.
How's it going?
I'm having major difficulties over here.
You and me both tonight, brother. Well, you know about my whole, video creation and YouTube fiasco today.
Yes.
Oh, it's been a nightmare. And while one of the videos was rendering, while it was converting to MP4, I managed to put water in both fish tanks, clean out Bubba's fountain, and go lug the Christmas tree and the box of ornaments and stuff from the shed upstairs into the living room, put the tree up and get it decorated, and it still wasn't done.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That's
that was when I
insane.
started messaging you going, there's got to be a better way. What software do you use? Oh, yes, Daryl, I did get the battery changed in the alarm, in the smoke alarm. I got that done last night. Yeah, for those that were listening to Hidden World last night, while I was gone over the weekend, the batteries went out in one of my smoke alarms, and I'm only 5'2", and I don't own a ladder, so I had to get a little creative last night because there was no way I was going to let that thing chirp all night, and so I had to get a little creative and do a little acrobatics, but I did get the battery changed out in the smoke alarm. So how's life in Massachusetts, Jax?
It's been warm and raining the last few days. And starting next week it's gonna be bitter cold again.
I wish it was warm here, but I know all of the skiers and snowboarders are so happy with the bitter cold that we've had for the last couple of weeks. So, I'm not a skier. I've been cross-country skiing 3 or 4 times. I've never been downhill skiing. I've never been snowboarding. I have stuck my butt in an inner tube and gone down the hill a couple of times. But
I've done that.
Yeah, I've never been skiing. And so, I really could care less about the snow, except for the fact, it's really good for the tourism industry in this area because the ski resorts, they thrive on the business. I'm just a hop, skip, and a jump away from Aspen, where they hold the X Games every year. So,
Right.
yeah, so I know the skiers are loving the bitter cold right now.
I don't mind cold, but when you get down to the polar vortexes, Jax don't stand that
Yeah.
too well. Just, I don't know.
Well, and you guys get those wicked nor'easters up there.
Yes. And we get the wind coming right in off the ocean, and it's like it goes right through you. I don't care how many layers of clothes you have on.
Yeah, I've been out there in the winter. I've been out there in the winter, and even though it's wintertime, you guys still have humidity, and so that wet cold, it just sinks right into your bones. It's pretty miserable.
Yep.
But I still wouldn't mind living out there someday, I think. I'm still monkeying with the idea of moving out there someday.
There you go.
Maybe. I don't know.
Well, this is the oldest part of the country out here, so.
It is. It's the first part of the country to be settled.
So there's one place that's technically older than Plymouth, Massachusetts, and that's St. Augustine, Florida.
Right. You're absolutely right.
And that was established in the 1500s, I believe. 1540 something. I can't. I know it's mid 1500s.
I don't know. Seraphine Hurley, one of the other L&M hosts, she could answer that question because she loves St. Augustine. She could answer that better than we could. I've been to Florida twice, and I can die and without ever having going back. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of Florida. I don't understand why the old folks flock there. I don't get it. I don't get it. And Florida is not my favorite.
It's so hot
place.
and humid down there too.
Yeah, worse than New England.
Yes, absolutely.
Although I have to say, the most humid place I have ever been, it was 10 years ago, and it was Indianapolis. And the humidity was so bad you could see it. It was,
wow.
Yeah, it was like you were driving through fog. It was miserable. Yeah, it was awful. And, I stopped for fuel in Indianapolis and, talking to the locals at the convenience store, and I'm like, is it always like this? And they're like, yeah, in the summertime, this is how it is, Didn't bother them a bit. I'm like, oh, Irish white girl's gonna melt. And yeah. So that was Indianapolis was bad. It was miserable that day that I drove through. Ugh. That was 10 years ago. So, although we went through a couple of places on our trip last August when we came out to see you guys. Driving through the Carolinas, there was one point where it was so humid, the windows kept fogging up in the car. We actually had to turn the heater on to defog the windows. And one of the girls that I was traveling with is going through menopause, and she's like, don't turn the heater on. I'm like, do you want to be cool, or do you want me to crash the car because I can't see out the window? And and then we'd get the windows taken care of, where everybody can see. We've got the AC on, we're all comfortable and everything. We stop for fuel, and this same person is sitting. We stop for fuel. This same person is sitting with the car doors open, and I'm like, close the door. You're letting in the humidity. We're gonna have to turn the heater back on to get to defog the windows again. And they just didn't understand.
Well, if they just wanted to warm up, get out of the car and shut the door again.
Right, but she didn't want to do that. And see, I lived in San Antonio, Texas for 4 years. That's where my son was born. Was San Antonio. Yeah, and it gets humid down there. And so that was where I learned all of the the tricks for dealing with humidity. Yeah, San Antonio, you walk outside you put on clean, dry clothes and everything, and you walk out the door, and within seconds you're soaked. It wasn't so thick that you could see it, but you walk out. You never had to use lotion, ever. Your skin was always moist and soft and gorgeous, because it's so humid down there. But that was how I learned how to combat humidity, was the 4 years that I lived down there. And I was actually pregnant with my son during the hottest summer on record down there. Oh, it was awful. It was bad enough that it was so hot, but being pregnant on top of it was just bad.
Wow.
Nightmare. And that was 18 years ago, because he'll be 18 here in a couple of months. So, yep.
How does that make you feel?
Old and sad and depressed. And yeah, well, you know that I put the tree up today. And,
yes.
and did some other decorating around the house and everything. And, because he'll be home for Christmas. He'll be home on Friday.
Yay.
And for 2 weeks, yeah, he'll be home. And this is his last obligatory Christmas at home.
Oh.
So I'm very sad. Sad panda, it's like, this is the time of year, to be happy. And I can't, because I know it's his last obligatory Christmas at home. It's the last one that he's forced to come, spend with mom. And he lives with his dad by choice, and that's his choice. And that's the way he wants to do it. But he's already told me, which college he plans to go to. I tried to get him to come down here and stay with me, and go to the community college here and get his general education credits knocked out of the way. Nope, he doesn't want to do it. He wants to go to Arapahoe College in Denver. And then as soon as he gets all of his gen eds knocked out, he wants to go to Metro University in Denver. So...
Well, he's still in the same state, right?
He's still in the same state, but there's that part of you that feels like, it's like, I'm losing my baby. He'll never come home again. But I have to tell you, I had the coolest conversation with my brother this evening. As you know, my brother made this miraculous recovery this last week, and thank you, Jax, because I know you were part of getting the word out and sending out the prayers and the positive vibes and everything for my brother. But today is his birthday. And
happy birthday.
So I talked to him on the phone, and he said, the situation really sucked, but I'm glad we got to spend a couple of days together. And I said, yeah, I'm happy for that too. And he says, I got a lot of damn sisters. He has 7 sisters, biological sisters. And he goes, I got a lot of damn sisters, but you're the best one. And I'm like, oh, thank you. I love you. Oh. And yeah. And I was there. I held his hand through the whole thing. And I asked him again tonight if he remembered anything from the time when he was dead. And he does not. And so, of course, I joked around. I said, well, we're not going to kill you again to find out, just to see if you remember something again. I said, we're not going to do that. He says, yeah, no, let's not do that. But he said this whole experience has really kind of given him a wake-up call and given him a new sense of purpose. And so I'm pretty happy for that. I'm just happy to have my brother, to still have my brother with us. That's what I'm happy about. And the fact that there is no brain damage. None.
Yes, that is a miracle.
They don't know how long he was dead. And there is no brain damage.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Although I did pick on him a little bit. In the hospital, I told him, I said, guess what I found out? He says, what? I said, they scanned your melon, and now we have proof that there's a brain in there. There isn't just a sign that says space for rent. I said, we actually have proof there's a brain in there. And he's like, oh, crap, now you're going to make me use it. So, it's been fun to laugh and joke with my brother. And, and again, I'm so thankful that I was able to call him and talk to him today on his birthday. That he's still around. I can do that, and that when my son comes home on Friday, it won't be until probably Wednesday of next week. But we're going to drive down and we're going to see him. We're going to go visit with him. So that my son can go hang out with Uncle Cheese.
There you go.
Well, all of us have nicknames. My son calls my brother Gordon. When my son was little, when my son was little, he called Gordon Uncle Gordo. And then when my son started learning Spanish, he learned that in Spanish, Gordo means fat. And so now he calls my brother Uncle Fat. And yeah. And Tony, my brother Tony, he calls him Uncle Cheese. And my sister Amy, he calls her Aunt Herman. Another sister, he calls Aunt Jockstrap, because she used to be a tomboy. And so we've all got nicknames.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, my son is excited, that he gets to go and visit Uncle Cheese while he's home for Christmas. And I'm excited for that too. Just so I can, hang out and spend some more time with my brother. Because that's what's important. And
absolutely.
I'm trying really hard not to get all gushy and mushy. And speaking of my son, he is calling. So we need to go to commercial because I need to fuss at him. So you're listening to Periscope Uncensored on the LNM Radio Network, and we will be right back after this commercial message. Welcome back to Periscope Uncensored on the LNM Radio Network. I'm your host, Clarissa Vazquez. Riding shotgun in the co-pilot seat tonight is the man, the myth, the legend, Jax.
How you doing, everybody?
And we have got some, oh God, our producer Daryl just turned his camera on, so now the craziness is really going to start. We've got a couple of guests on the line this evening. As we mentioned earlier in the show, tonight's going to be about family, and so we're bringing together elements of the CCPI family and the ECCPI family in the form of from ECCPI. You all know him, you all love him most of the time, Mr. Chris Carr.
Hey, hello, good evening.
And from the CCPI family, we have our fabulous technical manager, Mr. Erik Mazur.
Hello.
And, tonight I'm in Erik's shoes tonight. And I'm going to tell you why. Because in the CCPI family, it is Erik and a bunch of women. We pick on him and tell him that he has this harem going on. But tonight it's me and a bunch of guys. How lucky am I, right?
There you go. You're in.
I get to take a walk in
Awesome.
Erik's shoes. If a woman has a whole bunch of guys, is it still called a harem?
It's called a hoe. A hoem.
A hoem. That's cool.
The rules aren't there.
So
Leave it to Chris.
yeah, leave it to Chris. Well, the show is Periscope Uncensored, but Chris, you still have to follow FCC regulations. So no F-bombs, no S-bombs, no P-bombs, and, well, you know the list.
That's
You
right,
don't
Chris.
you don't abide by it anyway, but you know the list.
That's right, Chris.
Speak for
That's
yourself.
right.
I've heard more than one P-bomb from you.
Yeah, well, you guys baited me on those P-bombs. So you totally set me up for those. They did, didn't they, Jack?
No,
Yeah.
you know what? I plead the fifth on it.
They set me up.
I plead the fifth. Okay, if you say so.
They did. They baited me. But
Everybody else is crazy.
I'm sweet and innocent, I tell you.
Ha.
Eric's not buying that. See, and that's the downside. The three of you guys know me way too well. I can't get away with nothing on this show. Darn it, I'm going to pout now. So, since Erik is the new guy, really, this is his first time on the radio, I think. Am I right, Erik?
Other than a political interview way back in the day, yep.
Okay. So, yeah, no, we're not talking politics tonight. Wait, I may be lying right now. Chris, are you drinking?
I'm drinking orange juice.
Okay, so there will be no politics tonight. So let's start with Erik. And for our listeners, Erik, what got you interested in chasing ghosts?
More than anything, I'm not a believer. I want to see something, and so when my wife saw you all were looking for investigators, I was like, yeah, let's do it. So really, I'm have to see things to believe them, and so that's why I joined.
And are you leading more toward being convinced since you've signed on with CCPI?
Oh, we've had some cool things, but I haven't seen anything with my eyes yet that really, or heard anything live that has sucked me in completely.
Right.
So, some cool EVP stuff, but
yeah, and some really cool SLS stuff.
That's true. That's true. I'm just waiting to get something thrown at me, then I might buy in completely.
I can throw something at you the next time I see you, man.
Yeah, I should have said that better, I guess, huh?
These guys know I'll throw something at you. And Mr. Chris, for our Periscope listeners who don't know, what got you interested in chasing ghosts?
I think I was just always interested in paranormal and interested in superstitions and occult topics and stuff. I was a big fan of shows like In Search Of growing up, and certainly like ghost stories. So it's just a natural extension of that.
Right on. And
what are you doing over there?
I was showing you the tree.
Oh.
I know I sent you pictures earlier, but I was just showing you the tree. And
glad to see it's still standing and your cat hasn't taken it out.
Well, if you look closely, you can see him down. He's still there guarding the stockings.
Oh yeah, he's waiting.
Yeah, he's waiting. So, and surprisingly, he's not meowing at me right now. So last night he was really vocal. But so Chris, since you joined ECCPI, have you been able to have any, really cool or unusual experiences or capture any really compelling evidence?
I like the ghost box recordings I got from our first investigation. They're still my favorite. SK was really interesting. SK Pierce was neat and had the feeling, but I think I got more data, I guess, actually on our first investigation.
Right. And that was, for our listeners that don't know, the co-founder of ECCPI, Dave, had showed you around the space you were investigating, and you went through one of the areas with your ghost box and you were asking questions, and you said, do you know the name of the guy that was showing me this area? And the ghost box said it
wasn't exactly that, but it was close.
Similar.
A similar question. I forget the actual question and response verbatim, but I've been meaning to get around, put them up on YouTube or something, because they're pretty good. And Dave's name was mentioned in a few of them, which was unusual. I think it was 6 times in one of them.
Yeah.
Your parents' name just pop up in the background. And when you consider what the Spirit Box, which was a Shack hack, just modified Radio Shack radio, spinning through the channels, how often you hear it, as if it just appeared on different channels, the likelihood of that actually occurring is really low. You know, somebody would say Dave's name, which is a one-syllable name, Dave,
Right.
Dave, Dave, you know, and it's changing channels all along. It's going at a pretty good clip.
Mhm.
So it's pretty compelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that kind of old school technology. Tonight I've been playing around with the Echo Box, and you're not a big fan of apps, and I haven't been, but we have a friend out there, Tim, who has been into them lately. So his interest in seeing it on Facebook really has been sparking my own. So I've been messing around with that a little bit tonight. It is kind of interesting. I've had this app for years. I had an earlier version of it when I had an iPhone years ago. And then I didn't have that job anymore, and it was a job phone. So it sat in the Apple store up until very recently when I got a new phone from my current job, and it happens to be an iPhone. So I was able to go retrieve it. I guess they do make this for Android, but I never had the Android version, and I had purchased this Echo Box program, you know, again, some years ago.
Right.
He was talking tonight about a new version coming out that uses the human body as an antenna. It's going to be Echo Box 4. And when you touch it, you're actually the antenna for it. So it's kind of interesting and a new aspect. So
Very
be
cool.
looking for that. It's not out yet, but you have to preview it apparently, which is
Now,
pretty cool.
Erik, you and Sarah had a really cool spirit box session last spring. Was it? Yeah, it was last spring, if I remember correctly, up in Newcastle, right?
I was trying to think. Yeah, that was cool because I guess they have bad reception there in terms of radio reception. We had the spirit box going, and there's a very clear female high that didn't fit in with any of the little blips that we were picking up, and it was cool to hear it live.
Right. And if I remember correctly, you and Sarah had just introduced yourselves and made a comment about, you know, how you just wanted to talk, you just wanted to communicate. And the spirit box said, hi. And I actually sent that clip to Chris to listen to. And I think, if I remember correctly, you were pretty impressed by it, weren't you, Chris?
Yeah, I think so. I think I remember the clip. It was a while back.
Yeah, it was last
It
spring.
was good. I like most of the clips you sent me. You sent me some really good EVPs too, for some recent investigations you guys did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Erik, I sent Chris and Joe both the EVP that we caught in Grand Junction last year, the I Don't Want to Die EVP.
Right.
I sent both Chris and Joe
Oh
that
yeah.
EVP. I said, take a listen to this and tell me what you think. and
That's a good one. It's really clear.
And, you know, Chris, he must have heard your voice because now he's hollering at me. Ah, come here. There's Bubba. I think he heard
Bubba.
Chris's voice.
Stay away from the tree, Bubba.
Yeah.
Bad, Bubba.
Yeah. I was not happy with that when he was trying to tackle the ghost on the top of the tree. And for our listeners that don't know, I don't do a traditional Christmas tree. I mean, it's a tree with lights and ornaments and stuff, but it's decorated in ghosts. And my tree topper is actually a ghost that sits on top of the tree. And I got this fabulous picture of Mr. Bubbaloo, my fur baby, chasing the ghost on the top of the Christmas tree. And so for those of you that follow me on Facebook, you can see that picture because I did post it after I messaged it to Chris and Jax and said, oh, this may not end well.
Right.
Yeah, my cat wants to play fetch. Sandy just brought me his tinfoil ball.
Oh,
My cat
Bubba
actually
brought
plays
some
fetch.
toy.
My polecat, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, Bubba plays fetch too. But
Dog.
and that brings us up to actually a really interesting topic of conversation that we can discuss tonight, guys. And somebody asked me, I did an interview on Friday, I think it was. Maybe it was Thursday. I don't know. Between family emergencies and catastrophes and all kinds of stuff, and I think I've slept since then. But I did an interview not too long ago, and the guy asked me what I thought about animals being able to detect ghosts and spirits. Again, I'll send this one out. I'll direct it to the rookie first. Erik, what do you think about dogs and cats being able to detect paranormal presence?
I know anyone that has a cat or a dog has the experience of them staring at the wall, and you're looking for the bug or whatever it is that has them so interested. I don't see why they wouldn't be able to. I mean, other senses of theirs are much better than ours, and it may just be something that's a more innate ability with them. In the case of Bubba, you know what he's staring at, the ghost on top of your tree.
Yeah. I think he agrees with you. Yeah. Do you agree? Do you agree, Babaloo? Yeah. Yeah. He wants catnip. That's what he wants. He wants to get high. Chris, what do you think about animals being able to detect paranormal presence?
I have no doubt about it. I think they can. I think children can too. When small children seem to be innately tuned to paranormal and have conversations and look at things, that we can't see, which is interesting. I mentioned, kind of related to that, bat recordings last night, and echolation, they call it. Bats talk to each other, and on a higher frequency than we can hear.
Right.
They call that echolation.
Echolocation.
Yeah. They do this often, and a lot of other animals also communicate in higher frequencies. So rodents, insects, it would make sense that maybe the cat can hear in a higher spectrum than we can. Humans are kind of top out around 20 kilohertz, I believe, and that's even good for a human. Most adults don't hear above 15 kilohertz. So there may be something to that. We can now record in those a little higher spectrums in human hearing. We have microphones that are tuned to it and sampling rates that allow it with our field recorders.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be detuned, slowed down to human ranges. So that's kind of interesting. That may be an area of tech that starts to pick up, and maybe a scientific answer as to why your cat hears spirits. Perhaps they're communicating in a frequency we cannot hear.
I don't know. I think my cat is just possessed.
Or see.
Jax, what do you think?
Well. I fully concur with Chris's assessment. I think that they can sense and see things that we can't. And there are legit teams out there that do have canines part of the team as a paranormal investigator. And that may be something that the ECCPI, East Coast Coalition of Paranormal Investigators, might be looking into in the future.
Yeah, CCPI members have brought that up to me in the past, and while I'm not opposed to the concept, my primary concern lies within the liability aspect.
Yes.
If the dog behaves adversely or becomes frightened or whatever, we don't want damage to property. We don't want damage to a person, be it a client or an investigator or the dog's owner. And so, that's where my hesitation lies. whether or not Bubba Lou can see spirits, I don't know. Like I said, I think he's possessed, but or he thinks he's a person. I don't know. But I know, Erik, during your training, we talked about the anatomy of the human eye and how that differs from animals, and how the light spectrum, and what part of the eye allows in different wavelengths of light and stuff. And I know Chris and Jax and we've all had that discussion as well, as far as the cones and the rods and the the regular visible light spectrum and stuff. I think we discussed it on Hidden World last night too, didn't we, Chris?
Maybe.
I think
Yep.
I feel like
Yeah.
I feel like I've talked about it really recently, and so I really don't want to go over it again, just because it's an awful lot to talk about, and I get tired of talking sometimes. Not all the time, sometimes.
Does anyone know of any research that's been done? I mean, Lord knows government spends money on all kinds of stuff. Does anyone know of any research that's been done on that?
I do. Well, a little tidbit. Like NASA has built telescopes, cameras really, that they've put on like the space shuttle in past missions that could see things outside of our realm of seeing, that were in different spectrums. They're large. The problem with that is if you try to view some of those spectrums, like the gamma rays and different things, the size of the camera gets enormous. So it's not the kind of thing we can do at home. Unfortunately, we putter around with full spectrum cameras, but they're only really partial spectrum, and they're just taking in a little wider range of frequencies. And they've caught things. I'm kind of into the UFO thing, and I've seen some of that video that's been posted as evidence or data about UFOs, and some of it's pretty interesting. There are definitely things moving around that the cameras picked up that humans could not see. So, in that aspect, yeah, that research has been done. NASA denies it, of course.
But as far as research being done with animals,
that's what I was wondering about.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I misunderstood.
The only research I know of was conducted maybe 15 years ago, if not longer, by Joshua Warren. He did a little bit of research on animals being able to see things that people can't. And I think other teams have researched it, but I don't think those research projects have been as thorough as we would like, and I don't know how much of it's been published. With a lot of research, a lot of teams will go out and they'll conduct these massive research experiments, but if the findings aren't what they are hoping for, then they don't publish the results, which does nobody any good, because it just leaves everybody scratching their heads.
And how do you record, say, non-typical senses? Like when an instance of a child, they know how good a child can hear and see, and the seeing is especially bad at the ages I'm talking about. Like when we're talking about babies that are 6 months old,
right?
They supposedly
under
just
3.
see cloudy images,
right?
So how does that work? And if it, in fact, it does work, it seems to. I mean, I had that experience with my own kids. They had conversations with people that definitely were not there, and it's a little spooky. It's kind of cool.
I think it would be just like
another way.
I think it would be just like any other thing that we research. The way we conduct our research is, you have other things, to back it up and validate. If you have a dog behaving erratically, barking at a wall, and you turn on your audio recorder and you happen to capture an EVP, then that's potential validation for what the dog was experiencing. And I think really that's the only way that we could logically and, dare I say, scientifically back it up.
Well, particularly if it's in another frequency, that we can't hear with our own ears. Getting back to what I was saying before. So say like rats communicate this way, right? Dogs most dogs don't like rats, right? They're bred to find them. So if there's a mouse on the wall or something and it squeaks in a way we cannot hear it, and that sets the dog off, that would be a reasonable explanation for that.
Right. But again, like I said, if you have an animal that's behaving erratically and you conduct an EVP session and you get, what sounds like a human voice on there, saying, shut the damn dog up, then,
Well, here's an interesting question that between cats and dogs, who do you think would be most in tuned, cats or dogs? I want to give a quick shout out to Mike Johnson. How you doing, Mike?
Is Mike listening tonight?
He is listening tonight.
Yo, Mike. And
so, what do you think of that question?
I think I'd have to go with cats just because with the pack mentality of dogs, you're used to having other eyes and ears versus being alone and dependent upon yourself.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Erik on this one. I think cats are definitely more in tune. And their night vision especially, oh my gosh. They can most definitely see things that we cannot. And even though, he likes to ignore me on a regular basis, I know that Bubba can hear exceptionally well. So, and I like where Erik was headed with that, just, the pack mentality, versus the lone animal mentality. A cat's senses do have to be a little higher. Even though we all know it's been scientifically proven that dogs have exceptional hearing.
Exceptional smell, too. And here's an area we don't delve into too much. Do spirits potentially have a different smell? Right? I know that sounds weird, but our other senses are tingled by it. Why not?
No,
ozone has a smell.
Yeah, ozone does have a smell. That's when you can smell the storm before it shows up.
Right. And like our other senses, we're limited to a certain range of possibilities that our brains can interpret. So, if there is a smell to a spirit, it might be something that's out of our range, but well within, say, a dog's. I would also say for the dog can be trained easier.
That's very true. That's very true. And guys, I like where we're headed on this subject. I think we're on a good roll. And it's even reminded me of a story, but we got to go to commercial. So when we come back, we're going to have more with Chris and Erik from CCPI and ECCPI. So stay tuned. You're listening to Periscope Uncensored on the LNM Radio Network, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Periscope Uncensored here on the LNM Radio Network. I'm your host, Clarissa Vazquez. Riding shotgun, as always, is the man simply known as Jax.
Hello, everybody.
And we've got a couple of great guests on the line. We've been having some really cool discussions tonight from CCPI, the Colorado Coalition of Paranormal Investigators. We've got our technical manager, Mr. Erik Mazur.
Hello.
And from ECCPI, the East Coast Coalition of Paranormal Investigators, we've got Mr. Chris Carr.
Hey there.
And guys, before we went to break, we briefly started talking about smells. And I know maybe all three of you have heard this story, but I don't think our listeners have. A couple of years ago, Susan, the CCPI personnel manager, she and I were in Tombstone, Arizona, and we were investigating the Birdcage Theater. And absolutely nothing was happening. We were on the stage, we were doing an EVP session, and I had the strobe lights going, and laser grids, and we were getting no interaction, no EMF hits, no nothing. It was dead, pardon the pun. And we were just getting ready to pack it up when all of the sudden, and to hear Susan tell this story, it's funnier than when I tell it because she can tell you about the face that I made. But I made a face, and she's like, what happened? What's going on? And it smelled like somebody had got in my face with the nastiest, stinkiest breath imaginable. I mean, it was like stank breath. It was awful. It was worse than I really can't describe it. It was so nasty. I could not identify things like chewing tobacco or whiskey or any. It just smelled rotten. It smelled like rotten breath. It was
sure.
awful.
See, smells sometimes are related in the paranormal events.
Right.
It's not often talked about. Thought of and talked about, but it is.
Come to find out, that was actually a pretty common occurrence at the Birdcage Theater. And given the time period when the Birdcage was in its heyday, dental hygiene was not as important as it is today. Granted, Doc Holliday, who was a dentist by profession, used to, frequent the Birdcage when he hung out in Tombstone. But, they didn't take care of their teeth. They didn't brush their teeth. They, and they chewed tobacco and drank whiskey and didn't brush their teeth. And so it was, pretty common for everyone to have ass mouth. And really that's what it was like. I know.
Is that the technical definition of that?
That's what I'm calling it, because it was bad. It was awful. And apparently the face I made was priceless, according to Susan. But we were talking about smells, and I can't speak for ECCPI, but I know with CCPI, that's a policy that we have, is that investigators not wear perfume, cologne, heavily scented underarm deodorant, things like that. Because in the event that, we are experiencing phantom smells, we need to be able to rule out that it's, it's not Clarissa's perfume. And
well, that's just a common sense thing, isn't it?
It is a common sense thing, but you would be surprised at how many people don't practice it and don't follow it, especially when they're investigating. And you can go into a lot of these old locations, and a lot of the reports are, we'll smell roses or lilac perfume oil, or, some sort of fragrance from a bygone era. And
sure,
so,
reported to have demonic activity, right? If you have reports of sulfur, which I find kind of interesting, as if it came from hell, or just a very bad corpse smell, or smell of death. I think is even more common.
Rotten meat, yeah.
The sulfur may be psychosomatic, but there are reports of it.
There are reports of it. Yeah, and it's one of the criteria that it's one of the criteria that investigators and researchers look for, when they are considering whether what they're encountering could potentially be demonic. It's one of the criteria. There are certain criteria that have to be met before that can be considered. And those, the rotten eggs, rotten meat, sulfuric type smells, that's one of the criteria.
I've actually smelled that before, and I mentioned that. I don't even know, even remember what investigation that was, because I brought it up and I said, "Can anyone else smell that?" And they're like, "No, we don't smell anything." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I mean, it was strong. I mean,
well,
for
when
me,
they say
anyway.
Brimstone, right? They say hell is full of brimstone. And I don't believe in hell, so this is completely just what I've been told.
Right.
Brimstone is sulfur.
Mm-hmm.
So hence that sulfur.
Yeah.
Smells, apparently.
CCPI.
Where did you smell it, Jax?
Go ahead, Jax.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I was agreeing with you.
Where was that?
I'm sorry?
Where was it?
I don't remember. I want to say it was one of the SKPS investigations, because we've been there twice, so I don't know which one it was.
Really? It was that recently?
Yeah.
Wow.
I believe.
Interesting. CCPI worked a case several years ago, and we started having some really interesting activity going on. One of the really weird things that was going on, the clients had a framed copy of the Lord's Prayer It was, the Lord's Prayer printed out all nice and pretty and put in a picture frame. And they had it hanging on the wall. And this thing, it was putting off EMF. And, up in the 200s. And we're like, well, maybe there's, electrical conduit running, it through the wall behind it. So we took it off the wall and put it on the kitchen table and ran the EMF meters over it again, and it went up. The EMF was climbing, and we ran it over the wall, behind where it had been hanging, nothing, zeros. And it wasn't, it wasn't a lighted picture. It wasn't a musical picture. I mean, it was just, a copy of the Lord's Prayer in a cheap frame. And we were like, okay, that's a little interesting. And, we continued to investigate, and there were other kind of spine tingling things that kept happening throughout the night. There was a period of time, where we were getting knocks in sequence of 3, which is another piece of criteria. But then there were 4 of us downstairs in the living room of this house, and the entire living room, it didn't smell like sulfur, but it smelled like rotting meat. It was awful. And, as soon as that happened, I called it. We got everybody out, and it was crazy. And hadn't had a potentially, and I use the word potentially very strongly, hadn't had a potentially demonic experience again until last year, until 2017, and we had 2. So, I don't know what was up last year. Last year was crazy. But, we talk about the phantom smells, and you don't hear about it as often as you hear about the, as often as you hear about, things like the EVP and the, the full-bodied apparitions and, God forbid, orbs. And now, the SLS footage is becoming more and more and more popular.
It's a thing.
Yeah, but it is a thing. You're absolutely right, Chris. And one thing, Chris, I know you and I have discussed this pretty thoroughly. Jax and I, not so much, but I haven't had a chance to talk with this to Erik as much. I know I'm still working on debunking the SLS. Every now and then it gives me, something that I just, it's a little too conclusive. And I just can't debunk it. But Erik, what are your thoughts on the SLS?
Well, we've got 2 different ones. They do not always show the same thing.
Right.
The one version I really believe picks up, I don't even know exactly what, but I've noticed on highly reflective surfaces that it tends to show stick figures. Usually the other one wouldn't.
Is it Susan's or Bonnie's that picks up the reflective images?
To me, it's Bonnie's.
Okay, that's the XCAM version. Or no, I'm sorry, that's not the XCAM. That's
Connect or whatever.
The Connect version. Susan has the XCAM. Yeah.
My thoughts are they're cool, they're fun. Some of the things that you see, as you said, they seem impossible to debunk. You ask it to wave, and it waves. Other times, it's on one investigation, we were shooting bollards in a garage, and every single one of them had a stick figure in it. And I find it hard to believe that every single one of those bollards had an energy, spirit energy in it.
Right.
So I think there's a lot more to be done to figure out what is real and what is a false positive.
Right. And Erik, you may not know this, but Jax had a really interesting experience with the SLS camera. I know he's shaking his head right now because he knows I'm going to tell the story. Jax actually got, and the SLS camera picked it up. Jax got a lap dance from a stick figure anomaly.
I got punched in the head. That's about as good as I can do.
Yeah. Well, and you got your hand shaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, you held your hand out, and the stick figure anomaly held its hand out as if it was shaking your hand. So you got your hand shook.
But again, it still seems like there's a lot of false positives that need to figure out what causes it.
Right. The problem I have with it is that it's if the machine detects an anomaly, the slightest movement of the device, it disappears. And so it's like, what is it detecting and why does it disappear if I move it a fraction of an inch? Why does it have to be held perfectly still in order for that anomaly to remain on the screen? Now, there have been other cases, and all three of you guys know, that I've been working on this. There have been cases, where I have moved the camera and the anomaly has remained on the screen. In fact, Chris, you and I when we were at SK Pierce, we were down in the basement. It wasn't the cistern room. It was another room in the basement where we actually captured an anomaly crawling on the ceiling with the SLS
that was pretty
camera.
Cool.
And I was able to follow it with the camera as it crawled across the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
That's creepy.
It looked like something out of The Ring. It was pretty neat.
Yeah, it kind of did.
A horror movie crawling across the ceiling like that.
Yeah, it kind of did.
It's creepy.
Yeah. And that was you and Alicia and I think. Was it? Yeah, it was Alicia that was with us down there.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think that, like, with Erik's experience with whatever it was that was shaking his hand, could the camera be mirroring him?
I looked
shaking
into that.
Himself?
I looked into that, and I actually, to bring up Erik's point, I looked to see if there were reflective surfaces around him. And from what I could tell, that was the second time you went there, right, Erik? That wasn't the first night when I was there?
Correct.
Yeah. Correct. So from what I could tell, based on watching the footage, there were no reflective surfaces in that spot where Erik got his hand shook.
I think he's talking more about something like an algorithm, something in the programming of the software that would mirror,
or camera malfunction or something.
It's possible.
I just want to say, if I remember correctly, I reached out my hand, and it took a second or two. It wasn't exactly a mirror image. Not to say that it couldn't still be a computer issue, programming issue, but definitely seems more reactive than mirrored.
Yeah, and that was what I was about to say. Is there was a delay between when Erik held his hand out and then the stick figure anomaly, reached out as if shaking his hand. There was a delay in that. So, but it's still possible.
Which there usually is a delay if you're catching the footage that you think that you're catching. There usually is a delay. I mean, as you know, like with human beings, if you have an investigator off in front of you and you're slowly panning with the camera, the SLS camera, you can actually see a stick figure inside of the investigator. That's right. Part of their energy, so to speak.
Right.
So it's when you catch something else, this unexplained anomaly that is in a form of a stick figure. I mean, you should be able to tell the difference, but something like with the SLS footage that I caught at SK Pierce Mansion. Now, twice in the same location, I caught what it appeared to be two tiny stick figures about child size, and they stuck their hand in my hand.
Yeah, and that was on two separate occasions.
Correct.
At the same location in the same building. And so, in my opinion, that's validation. That's validation because you were able to duplicate your results.
Right.
Yeah, definitely compelling. And I think it's perfectly reasonable to assume that there would be some sort of a delay. Just like when we record EVPs with a voice recorder, you ask a question, you wait. Your responses aren't usually instantaneous. It seems to take some time. We don't know, of course, why that is, but it seems to be. It takes some time for them to respond.
But why do you think that this footage that we're capturing with the SLS camera? Thank you. Why do you think that why, like, if someone's sitting down, why do you think there's no stick figure? Why is it only when they're standing up that you capture a stick figure within, the outline of the investigator that's standing in front of you?
I don't know. Is it the shape of it? Do they capture? I forget. We had
captured sitting
camera.
anomalies.
You got sitting anomalies? Okay. I was going to say, how well does the
anomalies.
actual Kinect camera capture when it's used for its normal function?
I
People
don't
sitting
remember,
as opposed to standing.
I don't remember if it was with the Kinect or if it was with the X-Cam, but I know that we have captured sitting anomalies.
And you don't always get people standing up either.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I've gotten the opposite. I've gotten when the investigator has been standing up but not sitting down. Like, for instance, like when I had that female investigator sitting down in the chair in our very last investigation in Maine. She was sitting there. She had her leg crossed, and she had her right arm bent, and she had it on her cheek.
Mm-hmm.
And there was nothing, no stick figure, until a stick figure just happened to get on top of her. And I asked her, I said, do me a favor, raise your arm. And she did. It went up with her. Same exact time. I said, okay, you can put your hand down. She put her hand down. I said, do me a favor, put both hands up. She put both hands up, and there was a delay, and then the stick figure put its hands up, but the way that she was sitting was not the same way that the stick figure was sitting.
Right.
And this was all before the stick figure reached down and started getting its rocks off.
Yeah, Eric doesn't know about that story either.
So it was, I mean, this particular place, there was claims that it didn't like men, and it would sexually abuse women.
So the fact that you got a lap dance, what does that say about you, Jax?
Something that like they like me, and hopefully it was female.
Right.
No, we have captured anomalies sitting down. We actually captured one, the same location that Eric mentioned earlier, where there were bollard poles on location. We did capture an anomaly sitting, crisscross applesauce on the floor.
We caught them fighting.
Yeah, we've caught them. We've caught a couple of stick figures, appearing like they were duking it out.
And another set where they were enjoying themselves physically.
Yeah.
Keep it PG. That was really interesting. That was the same spot. Both of those were the same spot.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and at that same location that we've investigated there twice. And the first time we were there, my son was with us. And Bonnie had the SLS camera. Bonnie's our case manager. She had one of the SLS cameras. And she was scanning the area and had my son in view of the camera. And my son goes, "My back hurts." And she says, "Well, there's a stick figure on your back right now." And he kind of went, "Oh, okay, cool." And, it's a good thing I wasn't in the room. I probably would have gone all mama bear on it, but he was investigating with you that night, Eric.
Yeah, I think with those cameras, there just has to be a lot more footage that comes out and is analyzed, and at some point I'm guessing there'll be filters added that clean it up a little more.
I hope so. I certainly hope so. The technology is advancing all of the time. And was it 2 weeks ago, we had Ben Robison on, and he was talking about his CERM hypothesis and his desire to have a device that records with a data logger, audio, video, and EMF, all in one device that that records to I'm botching this all up, in conjunction with a data logger, so that you can see in real time if there is an EMF spike in conjunction with this audio or video being captured.
Right, he's trying to capture more frequencies, really, which goes back to what we were saying with like the dogs, which a quick Google on our break there showed me that dogs hear between 67 hertz and 45 kilohertz, where humans, we cut out at 23 kilohertz, and most adults are considerably less than that, more like 15. So I give you an idea just how wide a range they hear, that things that we just miss. If we had some kind of device that could record or at least capture and show us that something happened, kind of like the bats talking, those other frequency ranges. The same goes for light and sound, logging data. It's kind of what the bat thing does. If you ever seen the programs those guys use, they, show indications that, there's bats talking here, echolocation is occurring now, and you'll see the blips on the screen, although you don't actually hear it.
Right.
Well,
yeah, I
how
get
cool
it,
would that be?
And I think there's a need for it. But I certainly don't have the tech know-how. I mean, heck, I was on with the two of you all day today trying to figure out how to make and upload a YouTube video. So, I certainly don't have the tech know-how. Erik, what do you think?
I know, I think I was telling you a little bit about this, but I did a quick EVP session at the location where my company had their Christmas party.
Yeah.
And picked up a couple things, just listening to it normally, and then in playing with frequencies, and I can't remember off the top of my head which way I went, but it seemed after really changing some of the filters that I actually found other stuff that you didn't hear normally. Mm-hmm. So I think there's definitely something to be said about, when you're reviewing evidence and whatnot, there's more layers than you're picking up.
Yeah.
Normally.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Erik captured a big old FU at that location.
It was pretty funny.
And on that note, guys, we've got to take our final break of the evening. But when we come back, we're going to have more with Chris and Erik. So stay tuned. You're listening to Periscope Uncensored on the LNM Radio Network. We will be right back. Welcome back to Periscope Uncensored on the LNM Radio Network. I am your hostess with the mostest, Clarissa Vazquez. Riding shotgun tonight is my always dusty but ever trusty sidekick, Mr. Jax.
How you doing, everybody?
And we've been having a great time tonight, Jax. We've been talking about theories, and we've been talking about technology and some of our experiences and everything. I'm kind of glad that the rest of the CCPI and ECCPI team bailed on this, because, just having Chris and Erik on the line has been great. What do you think?
Sometimes smaller is better. And so far it's been working out.
We were supposed to have two more.
Certainly is if you're in prison.
Oh my gosh. Keep it clean, Chris. Keep it clean. We were supposed to have two more CCPI members on tonight, but one of them has family coming in from out of town, surprise, and another one had to finish her holiday shopping. And personally, I think she wanted to go back to the mall because she was at the mall 2 weeks ago in Grand Junction, Colorado, little itty bitty Grand Junction, Colorado, and she actually ran into Zach, Aaron, and Billy from Ghost Adventures in the mall. She chased Aaron through the mall until he met up with Zach and Billy, and and then they started talking to her, and she got a picture with them and everything. And of course, she sent it to me, knowing that I really don't like those guys. She's like, "Look who I found in the Mesa Mall," and I'm like, "Why?"
Are there still 3 of them?
Well, Nick left, and Billy has replaced him.
Nick got fired, didn't he? He got fired.
I don't know whether he got fired or whether he left voluntarily, but Nick is no longer with Ghost Adventures, and Billy has replaced him. And but Zach and Aaron, and we've all discussed. There's only one thing that Zach Bagans is good for, and that is his biceps. So.
I watched an episode recently, and it just seemed like it was all Zach. I think I saw one other guy, and not the third guy, but maybe I wasn't watching close enough.
Yeah, I mean,
it's more centered around Zach. Not that it wasn't before, but it seems even more so now. So
it's starting to remind me of Paranormal State. Do you remember how Paranormal State ultimately became the Ryan Show? That's what it. And not that I watch the shows, but I see the hype, all the time on social media. And, and so, Eric, what do you think of the paranormal TV shows, Eric?
I guess my comments would be that, one, I enjoy a lot of them. I liked Paranormal State. I liked Ghost Mine. I think the cool thing about them is whether you believe them or not, whether they're true or not, they have brought paranormal investigating into the mainstream to the point where I think people are more willing to go out and investigate, which is what it's going to take, because a lot of people doing it again and again and again until we figure out how to get results that we can duplicate. But I also think that the interest created allows some businesses to be more willing to let investigators in because there's a selling point to being a haunted hotel or a haunted train. So I think there's a lot of positive things to them. And true or not, they're always entertaining.
Right, for sure.
Yeah, Eric makes some good points. The shows have done a lot to remove the stigma attached to even talking about having had a paranormal experience. I mean, you guys will remember, Jax, when you and I first started doing this 20-something years ago, it was still really taboo to talk about having had an experience.
Yes. Yes, it was.
And the shows have done a lot to remove the stigma. And, like Eric mentioned, the locations are more inclined to let researchers in now, because there is some benefit to having a potentially haunted location. And I'm getting an echo. I don't know if you guys are hearing that also.
Yeah, I heard that. It's
kind of weird hearing my voice come through over the
a little slower too, it sounded like.
Yeah, well, I hear myself and then I kind of slow down a little bit.
Ghost in the Machine.
Yeah, Ghost in the Machine. I don't know. Daryl, is that something we can fix? Or Katie? Whichever one of you is at the helm?
It's neither of them. It was me.
It's neither of them. Oh, it was Jax. It was Jax.
Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, as far as the TV shows go, it's yeah, I'm changing the subject if you didn't notice. Yeah, it's the thing is that there are benefits, and one of the major benefits is what not to do during an investigation.
Right, but the average viewer doesn't recognize that that's what not to do.
Correct.
The average person sees, the poser in the too tight t-shirt on there, provoking and antagonizing and conducting less than ethical practices during his quote unquote investigations. And they are led to believe that that's appropriate and acceptable behavior when you're trying to communicate.
Especially in a public place. Those are public places. Now, you take what you see on those shows and you go into a private residence and you try doing that crap. For one thing, you're going to alarm the hell out of the people. Can't go in there and start shouting in their living room and, the whole thing. A lot of times people don't even want to discuss it, or they don't really, they want to be alarmed. You don't want to put fear into people if you're doing a private investigation.
Yep.
That's been a problem for
you want to give them a sense to calm.
Yeah. But guys, we've reached the end of our interview time here on the show. So Chris, for our listeners, where can people find out more about you? Yeah, you are an old hand at this by now. You know what time it is. Where can people find out more about you, Chris?
They can go on our page, Clarissa, and they can go to www.cccvbooks.weebly.com. Find out all they need to know. We also have a Facebook page, which is Facebook/CCCV, Chris Carr, Clarissa Vazquez, books.
Yes.
That's it, right? There's no end on that one. It's just /books.
Yeah. Facebook.com/.
I screw that up all the time. Sorry, but
books. Yeah.
Use the search function and you will find us.
Yeah. Should I ask you the title of our latest book?
Yeah, sure. Let me pick it up.
Because you've got it right there. You can read it.
It's called Debunking Common Paranormal Myths, Exploring Psychosomatic Pareidolia, and it is available on Amazon, guys. And you can get the link from that Weebly site. Again, www.cccvbooks.weebly.com.
Yep. And Mr. Erik, for those for inquiring minds that want to know, where can they find out more about you?
I was going to leave that up to you. I'm trying to find our page real quick.
You can go to www.ccpi-paranormal.com.
Yes.
Or you can go to facebook.com/Colorado Paranormal.
See, those roll off your tongue a lot better than mine.
I've been saying it a lot longer than you have.
Thank you all for having me.
Thank you for being a great guest on the show, Erik, and happy holidays to you and the family.
Same to you all.
And Chris, happy holidays to you and yours. And
yeah. Nice talking to you. Nice to meet you, Erik.
Nice to meet you.
Guys, have a good night.
And Chris, I'll be talking to you here probably later this evening.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Good night, guys.
Good night. Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So Chris Carr from ECCPI and Erik Mazur from CCPI. Folks, wow, what a great show tonight, Jax.
Yes.
We could have gone on and on and on and on with those guys.
Absolutely. Could have been a 4-hour show.
Yeah, we easily could have done a 4-hour show with those two. And, I know that the producers like it, when we keep things kind of funny, but, tonight was pretty serious and I enjoyed it. I know there's theories and techniques that both of our organizations are working on that we could have talked about tonight. And, Chris started talking about Echovox and I was real quick to change the subject on there because I didn't want to get into it with him about apps again.
Yeah.
But who do we have coming up next week? Or no, we don't have a show next week.
We don't.
No, we are taking next week off to celebrate Christmas with our families. And the week after that, we're also taking off because that's New Year's Eve. Well, you're taking it off. I'm not. I will be doing 4 Drunk Broads with Laura Lee Potvin, Seraphine Hurley, and Mrs. Katie Neely. That'll be New Year's Eve starting at, I think it's going to start at 9 p.m. Eastern. I think. I could be wrong.
Yes.
But that's going to be here in Studio B on lnmradionetwork.com. And, you guys, well, Jax, I know you listened to the 3 Drunk Broads episode on Thanksgiving night, and that was a lot of fun. But do we know who do we have coming up after the first of the year?
Well, our next show will be January 7th, and we're going to have Mr. Bob Fontaine on the show.
Oh, Bob Fountain. Yes. Oh, he has got some stories, let me tell you. He has got stories that make seasoned investigators quit. Yes. I absolutely love talking to Bob. He is so cool. We're going to have him on the show, and we are going to have Hidden World next Sunday. Chris and I are going to be talking about the history of Christmas. So you definitely want to tune in for that and see what it is that we're going to be talking about and get the latest scoop. And of course, if you missed an episode of Periscope Uncensored, you can always go and find our archives on YouTube. Just look up Periscope Radio. And the same for Hidden World as soon as I get caught up and get this whole YouTube fiasco figured out. I'm looking right now at the YouTube page because I've been trying to upload that first video that I made. I've been trying all day to upload it, and it is still stalled out at 30%.
I can actually help you with that if you'd like.
Oh, I need all the help I can get. I'm not tech savvy. That's why I have Erik as part of CCPI. That's why Erik is my technical manager. And it's actually kind of funny. You know, we were talking about, last week we were talking about, our holiday parties and everything. And I was Erik's Secret Santa. And so I had a mug designed for him that said technical manager, but I crossed out manager and put in big red letters badass over it, so it says technical badass, and had a coffee mug made for him, and
that's cool.
Yeah, and he also got a blanket and a paranormal technology book, and because he's an avid reader, believe it or not, Erik likes to read, and so got him a paranormal technology book and some hot apple cider to go in his technical badass coffee cup and everything. I'm a pretty cool Secret Santa,
Yeah.
I shocked the heck out of Chris. He got his Christmas package the other day, and we were on Skype, and he opened his presents early, and discovered that I gifted him with not one but 6 crystal skulls. Different crystals. There was clear quartz and snowflake obsidian and tiger's eye and jade and a couple others. And he was like all kinds of happy. I thought he was going to start doing backflips or something. Especially when he opened the tin and found the cookies that I sent too. So I make a pretty good Santa, if I do say so myself.
Ho, ho.
Well, isn't that what Chris called me earlier? Didn't he say I was a hoe because I was on the air with a bunch of guys?
I don't know.
You were there.
No comment. On the grounds I may incriminate myself.
Be nice to me. I still haven't mailed your package. So
that's why I didn't say nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. You may be receiving a lump of coal.
Yeah. That's probably.
Yeah, probably. I had this grand plan, I was going to mail out the Christmas cards the day after Thanksgiving. That didn't happen. And I was going to, mail out all of my Christmas packages last week. That didn't happen. The postage was ridiculous.
I know. Everyone says that, you go through UPS or Federal Express and actually the way to go is the United States Post Office, and that's supposed to be the cheaper way. It's not really that much cheaper, to tell you the truth.
It depends on the weight. If it's over 2 pounds, it's definitely cheaper to go FedEx. But if it's under 2 pounds, the post office is the way to go. And I learned that when my sister's house burned down last winter. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
And I was constantly mailing stuff to Arizona because I collected donations from around the county. I put a thing up on Facebook and people were donating, clothes and toys and stuff, to my sister and her family. And, so here I'm having to mail all of these boxes to Arizona so that my sister could, rebuild. And, and I learned, that if it's over 2 pounds, it's cheaper to go FedEx. If it's under 2 pounds, send it through the post office. But still, that wall hanging, that small wooden wall hanging that I made Chris, it said "Tomb Sweet Tomb." It didn't even weigh a pound, and I mailed it in a padded envelope. So it wasn't even like I put it in a heavy box or anything. Still cost over $12 just for that one little thing. I was like, holy crap! I mailed packages off to Chris and couldn't afford to mail anything else.
Yeah.
So you do have stuff coming though, so it's all good, but it just might be a little late. Sorry.
It's okay.
I gotta find a lump of coal to send you though. I'm gonna increase the weight in that box. But we have actually come to the end of our show, folks. But I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank Chris Carr and Erik Mazur for being such great guests tonight. And again, we're going to take the next 2 weeks off to celebrate the holidays with our families. So, Jax, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And to all of our listeners, we wish you the very merriest of Christmases and the happiest of New Year's. And so for Jax, Chris, Daryl, Katie, the L&M family of hosts, and myself, have a great night, everybody. May all of your ghosts be friendly, and we'll see you in 2019.
Stay spooky, everybody.